Well, hello and welcome, everyone. We're back to another show of the Catholic Money Mastermind, brought to you by the Catholic Financial Planners Network. I'm Ben Martinek, your host, and I am joined today with Bryan Smalley, who hails out of the greater New York City area. Got to say, Bryan, it's not every day I meet and talk to someone who's living out that way, so it's just so cool that we're connecting today and having an opportunity to chat. Why don't you just kind of introduce yourself a little bit, Bryan, as we get things underway?
Yeah. Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me. Bryan Smalley, married, family, 4 children, and I am a wealth advisor at Corient Private Wealth. And I hail originally from Ohio, but now for the last dozen years have been in the great state of New Jersey, just a long throw from the city, from the Big Apple, but a reasonable and easy day trip for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. And you hail from the Northeast Ohio area originally, right? You were a bit of a career changer, is correct? Isn't that way? What did you do prior to financial services, Bryan?
Well, I ran a residence hall, Ben, at a big state institution in Ohio. Won't give any names out. They like to say "the" before their name.
What the heck?
But no, working with college-age kids and those issues that may come up in the residence hall, as I'm sure many of us can think back to our college days. But I knew early on, as much as fun as it was working at a college campus, that I didn't have the bandwidth to do that for a very long time, and that I wanted to really get into a career that suited both my interests as well as my skill set. So that's actually kind of how I got into financial planning. Once I felt like I was ready, my wife and I decided to leave the great state of Ohio and head to New Jersey, is where she hails from. And that's I've landed with my current firm, Corient, who a legacy firm, Region Atlantic, is where I started, and we became Corient just a few years ago.
Well, Bryan, that's so cool. I always love hearing more career changes and stories, and where people started. As you probably know, of myself, it was a bit of a career change coming into financial services, and I think it certainly adds some color to the advice that we deliver. But perhaps just without further ado, I'm kind of wanting to introduce our topic today, Bryan, which is on this an interesting track. We've had a previous conversation with Deb Meyer a few episodes back on her advocating for the benefits and the value and the consideration one should have with mom not working from home or staying at home, but instead being involved in the workforce, and really just the opportunity that women have in particular, but I mean maybe just both spouses, the value that can be to the household, but also to the broader culture. But we're going to have a bit of a contrast today, in which, in your experience, you're the flip side of this, right? Where we have instead, as an intentional decision, a good decision, I think, to have one of the spouses stay at home, and in your instance, your wife, and just kind of the financial implications of what that would entail, or what it did entail for you, and perhaps some of your consideration, for the value that you're seeing in a single income household, right? So maybe you want to share a little bit, Bryan, as we kick that thought off on, what prompted that decision initially. I would imagine maybe in the early years of your marriage, both of you were working. When did you make the decision for one of you to stay at home?
Yeah, that's correct, Ben. Both my wife Liz and I were working for our first few years of marriage, and when we were ready to start our family, it was my wife had the experience of both her parents working and being out of the house. And I think they did that very well as a family. And then I also had the experience of having my mom, one of my parents home with me growing up, and felt the benefits of that. So, through, very thoughtful and prayerful consideration, we decided let's aim to be able to have, one of us home, and, decided it was going to be my wife, Liz, and let's really make a go of that. And that was actually, when we talk about career change, one of the big changes that kind of led into needing to leave kind of university administration and wanting getting into another field was, can that that field itself support, our family on a single income. And so that was one big driver outside of just personal interest as well as my skill set that really led to a change in careers. So I think that's one of the first things to really look at is in many ways, in society and the cost of things set up for a double income type of household, you really need to say, can I get into a career or have a job in which we can live off of single? And we were talking a little before the show that, depending on it was a bit dependent on where you live. Obviously, and a lot of that I think is a driver around housing and ongoing housing costs such as property taxes. So for folks on maybe the coast, one would expect probably needing to have a higher level of income from the one source of income, and then maybe in the Midwest a little bit lower. So maybe Midwest around 75,000 a year to 100 could be a good ballpark of where one could really start considering to do one income, and then maybe on the coast closer to 100 to 125, as a consideration of where to start there. But definitely we gave a lot of consideration of, can we do this off of one income? And I'll be frank, when we started and just getting into a new field, you start kind of near at the bottom of the income chain there. And so we had to, we were fortunate enough that before we did this launch, we were very conscious of saving, and I credit a lot of my father-in-law that really encouraged us to start setting a lot of money aside as much as we could. So we were able to kind of get in with a purchase of a property to start. But I will say there was not many extra luxuries and stuff to start. It was get going there, and then on top of that, we added our first child pretty soon into the my wife staying at home. But you build from there, and hopefully your career and the income continues to expand as you go along.
Yeah, I think with any of these decisions, we can plan for them, we can anticipate them, we can run the numbers for them. But the truth is, it's like the dirty truth of financial planning is, planning is a process. It's not a plan. The plan in itself almost never works. And really all we're doing is like preparing ourselves to be ready for the decision and to say, hey, we have looked into this. We've given it due consideration, and we're just going to make the leap. We're going to make the jump, and we're just going to give this a shot. And, we'll make it work. It's really just like assessing. I think so much of planning is like assessing your commitment to say, yes, I'm ready to do this. And we've got it. It's got our full support. We're behind it. And then, we'll just see where things go from there. We got to make sure that life still remains an adventure and a journey. And,
yes.
There's a great quote I love from G.K. Chesterton out of his book Orthodoxy, in which he hints at that the world is not perfectly rational or logical, and that's okay, because ultimately the wildness of life still lies ahead of us. And let life be wild. It's okay for it not to be fully tamed for us. So
that's right.
Yeah. So, but it's a big decision to go to to a single income. Now, you might think naturally enough, like, look, we're probably reducing our financial resources. There's a cut. We don't have as much income coming in, and that certainly could be the case, especially if, let's say, both of your incomes are comparable. Now we're going to just one. You would think naturally enough that's a 50% loss, but in some ways, though, there isn't always necessarily a win with the second person, at least financially speaking, with the second person working, because you do have additional taxes with that person. They have their commute. Maybe you need a second vehicle. You have some overhead in that regard. Plus, if one of the spouses, if mom or dad's not watching the kids, somebody's got to be watching them, right? So
yes.
so could you just kind of, even though, probably naturally enough, the change to having a single income household is probably a reduction in income overall. Is it maybe as steep as you thought it to be? How much of a real change was it financially speaking to go from two incomes to one?
It was, there's definitely some adjustment, but I think you hit on the point. I mean, I know childcare in and of itself, the savings on that is drastic. And depending how you're receiving the care, some people literally the second spouse is almost working just to cover childcare. So there's a consideration there of, is this trade-off worth? But the other piece too would be, like you said, you're cutting a bit down on commuting cost, and some of those things as well. Although I will say, although this might get a little bit as we go down on the homeschooling instance, there are definitely some costs that you incur on that maybe you didn't necessarily anticipate. But one other piece too, I would say, Ben, that was a big consideration, and I had to get over was, I was what really got me one thing into personal finance and become a financial planner was just the personal finance stuff. Those personal finance books and what, a lot of times, right, you have to get out of debt, is one of the very first steps. And then you start saving for retirement or saving towards, emergencies or saving towards your future goals. And I really like just to be able to, plow a lot of money away, and the savings are a good percentage of what I made. One adjustment I did have to make going from 2 to 1 is 2, we were really able to be aggressive on our savings goals. I had to be okay with backing off a little bit on that when we went down to 1 income. It wasn't getting rid of that, but maybe really stepping back and being like, okay, I need to be more reasonable what I'm putting away for retirement, what I'm putting away on top of that, and realize, hey, part of the long-term trade-off with this might mean potentially working a little bit more down the road. Might be potentially meaning our vacations might look different, or other type of things that you might save to along the way, that with the 2 income, you might have a little bit more to be able to do aggressively, that you might need to kind of, temper. I really had to learn to temper my expectations a little bit, and also get out of my own head a little bit that like you just said, this is financial planning advice. It's not just a rule of thumb. You really need to fit it and customize it to your life experience and what's important to you. We could do two income and maybe be further ahead on some of our financial goals. But, the goal of, my wife being able to stay home and be the primary caretaker and we'll get into a little bit later, educator of our children was more important than that. So, and some others, it might be more important to get to financial independence quicker. But it's just important to really understand the priorities you have and be willing to make the necessary trade-offs.
For sure. One of the lines that I love about Dave Ramsey is he just likes to call money it's just stuff, right? A lot of times he'll throw that term out there. And I mean, these goals are important. We do have a connection of survival to money. And so if money's tight, it feels very threatening, to the very core of our being, even to some extent. So we shouldn't diminish it too much by saying it's just stuff. But, some of these goals, it is. When you're saving money and allocating and advancing your situations of all you can maybe do is retire sooner, that can obviously be an important goal, but it's still just money. Like it's not going to be the thing that fully completes you or makes you happy. We know better and know that it's just not true of life or really how God has created us. And so, I think what was interesting though, and some of the things that you brought up in this, Bryan, was that, prior to transitioning, from dual income to single income, I think there's 2 things that you had done, or we could maybe take away as, guidance for our audience. One would be, is your financial house in order? And do we have, some savings in place? So that'll be one item. I'd like to have you speak to that. But the other one could be this practical tidbit of, we don't have to go and just pull the wool, or what is the word? The wool from under our feet, or I'm really bad at
wool over our eyes, rug from under our feet, right?
That's right. Thank you so much. I'm really bad at colloquialism. So the rug from under our feet. Like we could just give it a test run, like while still producing both incomes, let's see if we can get by on just the single, and then have all that excess effectively going to savings. So there's like a combination of both goals that if you could maybe, talk about, being dual income, test running the single income through savings, what are your thoughts? Is that actually kind of what happened in your situation?
Yeah, it really is. My wife and I were in a little bit of a unique situation where our previous position provided housing as part of our compensation. So, but we made a decision early on, with encouragement from some people that were further ahead of us, and we kind of wanted to emulate a little bit and how they handle their finances was we got early on treated like we live off of one income. The other one we're just going to save and set aside. And while not everyone has that type of ability to do that, I would encourage, one is, and I think, on other episodes here, is you have to assess is, it would be really hard to go down to one income if you have a lot of debt. So one thing, if someone's really considering going to single income, is can you get down your debt, especially all kind of non-housing debt? Can you really put a minimum to that, get that cleaned up? Because having a lot of extra, debt payments is not going to be helpful on just one income. It's not helpful on two, let alone one. And the other piece would be is, since you're relying more on one income, is I would say build a bigger cushion to, the life happens kind of cushion, right? It goes without saying, you have to go get something new in your house, and then next thing you know, it's something else goes in the car or something like that. So make sure you have enough of that cushion there, that you don't feel like with every little thing that comes up, you're like, oh my gosh, this might push us over the edge. So yeah, I think give it a test run. Like I said, Ben, I think is a great way of doing that when you both have the two incomes, to really kind of feel it, experience it, see what it looks like. But also, if you decide, hey, this is where we want to go through, if you can give yourself some time to minimize debt, and as well as build up, a cash reserve, to just, I think it would be a very, very, very good way of getting yourself ready.
Right. I mean, perhaps maybe we've gone so far as to have a down payment. We've secured the house. We're able to handle that mortgage payment, and we're feeling good with that. And we've got an emergency fund in place, and we've got some reserves now set aside. I don't know if you necessarily need to go and have like retirement fully satisfied or underway. I mean, there are some goals that we could just let get accomplished as those goals come about. And, so much of financial planning is just really realizing our goals and our values and just achieving those priorities. Maybe we don't want to prioritize retirement over having mom or dad stay at home. We want one of the others to be there as that caretaker. So, and that's fine. Go ahead and prioritize that. There's so many good reasons why that's a good decision, and something you should commit to do. But I think one of the things you had brought up at the start of this, Bryan, and as we were chatting ahead of the call, was just that this shouldn't be a single decision, right? Perhaps it just goes without saying, but you this was a collaborative partnership-based decision. Both of you said, hey, we're all in on this. Could you maybe just describe a little bit about just some of the decision framework, think of it you'd gone through before you said, let's do it?
Yeah. I mean, I think what we really looked at was, well, one, is this both of our, are we both on board? Are we, like you said, are we both 100% in on this? And that just through, a few years of early on in our marriage, while we were both working and just envisioning and having goals for, what we envisioned and dreamed about for a family life and how we wanted family life to look like as well. So really just kind of looking in a little bit on just the kind of the practical day-to-day stuff of what family life would look like if we both worked or if one of us stayed home. And also we brought it, to prayer and prayerful consideration that this wasn't just something that we willed, but there was something that really felt like God wanted for our marriage as well as for our family life. So that was very important for us. And then we made the biggest step for us was when we moved from Ohio to New Jersey, and had one job. My wife, and we knew we wanted to start a family soon after. My wife picked up a side job just to work until, we were blessed with becoming pregnant, and then had our first daughter. And then then the rubber really hit the road there. But yeah, a lot through conversation, a lot through kind of just dreaming and envisioning what we wanted and hoped our family life to look like. And just, it's really putting some thought into stepping beyond just the day and day and really dreaming and envisioning and imagining things, what they would look like, and being like, okay, is this what we want? And if so, let's go for it.
Right. I think that, it would be hard. I mean, these are big decisions, especially there's going to be some level, I think, of sacrifice in this. But one of the things that stands out in my mind is the extent of sacrifice is maybe, a little bit questionable, because as much as, yes, probably we're seeing a loss in income and that makes things tighter and we have to be more thoughtful and intentional with our spending. One, we're not sure our money might be stretching further now than what we would have given it beforehand, because we don't have both of us employed, so there could be maybe less eating out costs, more homemade meals, which are a big ongoing expense for anybody's household situation. And so just, that change in itself could be a big source of savings, but not having another vehicle or another person, set of really workloads or people commuting, or the headaches and hassles, or the intrusions into other parts of, family or work commitments because of that extra arrangement. And then tax-wise too. I'm thinking, just actual home economics is a little cheaper. Just time availability is expanded. And then 3, just tax-wise, Social Security is, I'm thinking, one of the bigger taxes you pay in over time on your income. You get a spousal benefit, regardless. If you have one working and the other one working, and let's say the second person is working as just as much, or let's say half of the others, well, you're going to get the same Social Security benefits in that dual income arrangement as you would as if you had one person working 100% and the other one working 0, because of just how spousal benefits are arranged in Social Security. So there's just like an outright tax savings. That's 15% there. Where it's like, we're putting all this money into taxes, and we're not actually getting any economic benefit back home to us. From that.
And
any thoughts to that, maybe on just some of these like real world, like, hey, we're gonna see savings actually in some aspects of this with this transition.
Yeah, I think you hit on some of the key ones, and then I guess if you layer in a few kids there, then you also have the tax credits that come with children, right? To add on to that, I would also, I really want to touch on a little bit in terms of the time aspect that I think you're really picking up, and the flexibility with schedules. Don't get me wrong. Once everybody, you just maybe naturally gravitate to some type of schedule, and things can get busy, whether 2 parents working or one at work. But just the flexibility, the ability to definitely, put down time, such as, family dinners and things like that. I feel we come in a little bit less hectic and can really set some of those things, those things down. But I think is where one of the aspects I really appreciate is on the lifestyle, and just feeling, granted we have our moments, but feeling generally a little bit less hectic, and where's this person? How do we get here? And this, that, and the other. So.
Well, and I can relate. So, in our situation, both my wife and I work, and, we kind of echo some of, Deb Meyer's comments that she had on her episode. So be sure, everyone, if you haven't listened to that, to check that out in the Catholic Money Mastermind. But, one of the drawbacks to our working arrangement, I think we both feel called to be working involved in what we do. And my wife has just a great job and meaningful work in that. So it's good. It's the right thing for us to be working. But there are challenges, like we both work. And so, getting dinner completed and done, it alternates between the two of us over the course of the week. Our girls do thankfully go to a great Catholic Montessori school here locally that we're able to afford the cost for. Thankfully, it's fairly affordable. But, they do spend most of their day. There is at times where this pulls on us of like, gosh, they spend most of their day not with us. It's not until we get home after both of us have worked all day, and then now we're connecting with them. And I think, relationship wise, everything is good, but there is a benefit that just stands out in my mind of like, wow, it would just be wonderful at the same time for a parent to be at home, present to the children, and have that availability and those resources allocated in that way, to have one of you working, out in society and one of you working full time in the house. There are things where it's a struggle with both of us outside the house working, but when it comes back to those commitments or chores at the house, it's like, how are we going to work this in? Because we've already worked all day today, right?
Yep, all day and just ready for it's well, as we know too, even in any type of setup, when you have children in there, that's a whole different.
Yeah.
There's very little rest, but that's okay though because it's sanctifying and it's good. And actually, Ben, just one aspect with having one parent stay at home that opened up the door for us to really consider, which wasn't a decision until we made it a little bit later on, was actually homeschooling our children. So in some ways where we could have, you picked up some flexibility with one spouse staying home, we may have thrown some of that out the window by electing to school our children at home. So I don't know if you'd like to turn to that. I don't know as one option for
Sure.
as we're kind of building here. It's whether it's making that decision as a couple, right? Are we going to be a 2-income family? Are we going to be a 1-income family? Okay, if maybe the path is to decide on a 1-family income, all right. As with any sets, any parents have to decide. Okay, how are we going to? How's the day-to-day education, or the kind of, or call it the more formal education of our children going to take place? I know growing up, like I said, I had my dad worked, my mom stayed home. But I went to public school, and so did all my brothers. So that was a decision that my parents made. And homeschooling, as we were discussing a little bit, might have not been where it was in the late 80s, early 90s as it is today, where it seems to be a more realistic option for folks to consider. It's still a decision that needs to be made by every family, because whether it's public school or if it's private school, as you're kind of experienced a bit, there might be extra costs there that a single family household needs to consider. And then we decided that, to go the homeschooling route. And so my wife in many ways has somewhat less flexibility to do some of the day-to-day things that maybe she would have if our children were off to school. But, she is serving as their primary kind of day-to-day teacher too, when it comes to kind of more of their formal education.
Sure. I mean, I think what you have here, Bryan, is just a series of decisions. The one decision is, do we want to have a dual income household or a single income household? And what does that mean for us? And what really are we being called to do? Because I think either arrangement clearly is fine. I think there's plenty to be said for and against both. Although certainly traditionally it's been more of a single income arrangement, and there's good reasons, for that. But that's one decision. But then the next decision is, okay, well, who's going to be the educator of our children, and to what extent is the stay-at-home spouse, being functioning in that capacity as the educator, and are we going to be looking to have that get handed off either to a public school or private school arrangement, or would we ultimately choose private, homeschooling? And, across these, some of this it's a whole other decision in itself. Like, am I being called to be the educator of the children? Or is that okay only for that to get outsourced through other means? I mean, in our local area, I think we have very robust public schools. We have very robust private schools, and we have a really robust homeschooling community. There's really specific to me and where we live. I mean, all three of the options, as far as I'm concerned, are a very good choice for our girls. But we have opted. We have a good Catholic school, private school system, and so we've opted to go that route. I know of many in our community who choose to homeschool because that usually, I would say, in a single income arrangement, what would be very difficult to do is to have a single income and then at the same time send the kids to private school. I would say, this is what I'd like to welcome your thoughts on, Bryan. It's almost like the two go hand in hand. If you're going to be single income, homeschooling is either probably going to be homeschooling or it's going to be, public schooling. And then it's, which way do you want to handle, that decision, right?
Yeah. And that is, you would think from a financial standpoint, a potential, maybe the most financial stress would be, single income and then send the children to private school. But again, that's a decision between the couple and also the, what they're looking to do and what they want the home life to look like.
Yeah.
And and I would say one thing that's taught me in our experience, now doing homeschooling for, I'd say at least 6, maybe 7 years, is one, the abundance of resources that are out there for homeschooling families now. And many of them are affordable, but it's also important to note that homeschooling does not go without any cost. Some of these programs, curriculum, depending on which route you go, do have cost to it. So that is still something I think people need to consider, and I highly encourage, if you're single income and homeschooling, is to make sure you budget for educational expenses, as well as you actually have a great deal of flexibility with your schedule. So depending on when you live, there may be also a lot of kind of really experiential learning, kind of field trip opportunities available for families. So wanting to keep that in mind full. So one thing would not be like, oh, I'm not going to, I don't have the, necessary quote unquote, stock my kids up with a bunch of school supplies to send them off for the year or pay for private tuition. Oh, I'm home free, from a cost perspective. No, I would definitely make education and educational costs for a homeschooling family a line item in your budget, just as other families have to do who may be sending their kids elsewhere. One line item in the budget that I would definitely would say what surprised us was food. Not so much eating out, but then again, that's still one we always have to keep a little restraint on, is when your kids are home and you have their fridge there, they a lot of access to the fridge. When they're away, maybe they don't have as much. So, definitely for your household grocery budget, have to maybe be prepared for a little bit of a bigger budget there. But really the homeschooling decision, I thought, really came from our wife and I really seeing our call, to be the primary educators of our children and wanting to take that into the formal education as well. Because regardless of where we send our kids, the church and really God calls us all parents to be the primary educators of their children. We just wanted to take that extra step on from the formal perspective. It is, as with anything, it's moments of great joy and a lot of fun, but it's a moment of sacrifice too. And just one practical aspect is all hands on deck when it comes to kind of the household domestic chores. My wife at home doesn't have a lot of time to do laundry or grocery shopping and stuff. She's teaching the kids, we got 4 of them now. So she's balancing that out and tending to their needs and stuff throughout the day. So often it's weekends and evenings we're all hands on deck and getting our kids to try to adapt some of these household chores early on as well to help. But another aspect I think too is in homeschooling, I found that it's helped me broaden my kind of the opportunity set for my kids as they grow up and launch, where I was very kind of traditional, K through 12, college, maybe a graduate degree. And while I've received probably a few of my kids maybe still going that type of route, but really openness to entrepreneurship, trade schools, in the like, I found myself much more open to having embraced kind of the homeschooling. One is because one of the benefits is I think there are a lot of opportunities kids younger. And one thing with homeschooling I really appreciate is we can get most of our daily schooling done in the morning or by early afternoon, which allows a lot of opportunities for the children. Yes, when they're younger, to play,
Sure.
and to be kids. The other aspect as they get older and more mature in ability is to go out there and get a job at an earlier age, maybe test out a certain skill or something like that. Now, some of that's going to obviously rely on my wife and I to help make those connections for them. So there's a little bit more on us there, but are really excited and see that as one of the benefits on kind of the homeschooling end is some of those opportunities when your schedule is a little bit more how you want to create it to be.
Yeah, Bryan, so much of what you say there is it's just so interesting. On one hand, I was almost suggesting that, if the stay-at-home spouse would just have this abundance of time. And it's like, well, that maybe not if they're homeschooling. Like, yeah, whatever time they had is just, there you go. They're just really working a whole other job, except the compensation they're receiving is of another type.
It's on the back end. Yeah. It's on
But, it does kind of always beg the question of like, if from a matter of efficiency or optimization, what's the more economical way to go to be out fully in the workforce and committing and exchanging your time and resources and talent for the paycheck and then bringing that home and then, having that whole conversion of making your life balance, your home, your day-to-day through that work relationship.
Yeah.
Or I mean, historically, as I'm thinking, we've had most of our country, and I would dare say most of human life, to be entrepreneurial, where folks are primarily both stay at home, one staying at home, the other one's working full time, or at least it was a dual arrangement where both for farming or something of a tradesman, craftsman arrangement. And then the children, naturally enough, were being schooled in that main vein as well. Maybe there was some public schooling, maybe there wasn't, but like there's this, we have an interesting thing, I think is what I'm trying to say, in our modern day living, where it's very specialized and compartmentalized. And there is a degree of separation between the kids from the parents, where in vast stretches of human history, like that's really a completely new phenomenon, that the kids are so separated, or could be so separated from mom and dad. And perhaps maybe just as some concluding or final thoughts, is that really what you find is just like the huge win, is like we're pulling the two of these back together and the kids are closely joined to the parents?
I think you hit it right on the spot there, Ben. Is really, I think, really one of the things we really wanted to do was strengthen our family life. I agree. Noticing just the separation. Like you say, the specialization. Kind of like, you hear the whole idea, the house is just a place that people share to sleep in, right? And maybe share a little meal in, but to really use it as a space for family life to kind of develop and to flourish. The good, the bad, and ugly of it. Really seeing the family as a key place for our own growth and sanctification. And so really trying to embrace that as best as we can. And I thought, in preparation for this, I was thinking through, really used to listen to or read stuff from Jim Rome, kind of a personal development, and stealing from him, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Wanting to make sure that in our planning in our family life, that my wife and I are we meet those top 5 lists for our children. At least definitely in this early, in the very formative stages for them. So to us, I think we all have our moments of like, whew, what do we do? This is tough, but I think it's often with anybody's financial decisions and family decisions, really to be like, what's important to us, and are we doing our best to live out those important values or those things that are important to us. I think where it really kind of comes down to.
Yeah, Bryan, I just love that. I think that's a great thought for us to be wrapping up on is, we are who we spend the most time with, in the top 5. And let's make sure that mom and dad make that list or make the cut, right? And that would be, it is a bit of a tragedy to think that there could be situations in which mom and dad wouldn't be in the top 5 influencing list of their children, especially in those early years. And I don't know if there's too many people who would say that, that would be a tragedy, right? As parents, the special bond that we have with our children, they naturally look to us to be their caretakers. They want us to be their caretakers. We just have this built-in relationship. And, if only we're not taking care of our kids or taking on that primary responsibility, then, for God's sake, really, who is, right? I mean, if we're not going to do it. So just to step into that fully and say, this is my responsibility. I want to be the primary influencer, the primary developer of our children. And I'm okay with that. I'm going to step into that. it is a beautiful, beautiful gift, beautiful opportunity, and then only a beautiful sacrifice, because there probably is a bit of a loss financially speaking. But I don't know, these things I have found in my experience tend to work themselves out. I don't know how much I would make this decision based on the financial numbers. And am I better off or worse whether or not we make this? Is like I just don't think it's priceless. I don't think we can quantify the magnitude or the importance of the decision in dollars and cents. It doesn't translate well. So
Great, Ben.
well, folks, if anyone wants to connect with you, Bryan, maybe you've had some questions that have come up. You're like, gosh, I really could use someone to help anticipate or run these numbers for us and give me some direction in this decision. Obviously you could work in the Catholic Financial Planners Network. We're growing, every month with adding more and more members. And it really is rather awesome and excited to see folks that the network just keeps growing naturally as more and more Catholic advisors are finding out about us. So certainly consider looking to the Catholic Financial Planners Network. But, at the same time, may have a shout out for Bryan and reach out to you. What's the best way for someone to get a hold of you, Bryan?
Right. Oh, Ben, you hit it. One way would be through our website, the Catholic Financial Planning Network. All my information is there. My company, Corient, Corient. So our website, Corient.com. Corient's a little play on the word of client-oriented. We're a large kind of 30 office registered investment advisor. So we kind of fee only, provide full wealth management, investment management to our clients. So we care about these decisions and stuff that we've talked about in building out our kind of financial blueprint for our clients. So it can be found there. We're located, like I said, in my specific office is in New Jersey. So if anyone's near Morristown, New Jersey, not too far from the center of town there. Those are good ways to reach and touch base with me.
Awesome. Well, Bryan, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for talking about this important subject matter. And we certainly look forward to having you back. It's been a great time. And I think you've been just a valuable contribution to these matters. Everyone who's been listening, thanks for your time and attention. We really appreciate you. And in the meantime, we wish God's blessings upon each and one of you. Until then, we'll be in touch. God bless.